Hello. In this lesson, I'm going to teach you by ear the introduction to Kulthum's famous song, fintizarek. This introduction is one of the most popular pieces in Arabic music, and if you are a player of Arabic music, you really have to know it. So I'm doing this. There was a really popular response to my last video teaching Dulab Rust by ear, so I'm following that up with this one. But if you want a little more explanation, feel free to check out that video. That's Maqam Lesson 10, and it's linked in the descriptions below. And before I get into it, one more word of thanks to my Patreon supporters. I really appreciate the support. Your support is really helping me to continue to make these lessons free for everybody else who can't afford it. So thank you very much. And if you're not a supporter yet, but you can afford something affordable every month, and these lessons have value to you, then check out the link below to my Patreon page. Okay, so Intizarek is in Maqam Hijaz, and I'm going to play it in Maqam Hijaz on D just to make it easy for everybody. And I'll start by simply playing what we're going to learn in its entirety, and then we'll move by breaking it down into pieces. Okay, so Hijaz on D, and here is what we're going to learn today. That's the return to the start of it. So when we're learning by ear, the important thing to do is to be able to understand how much of a chunk of music you can reliably remember by ear. And a good goal is think about how many numbers you can remember in a phone number. We have memories that can short-term memory that can hold about 7 plus or minus 2 items. So if you're totally new to learning by ear, you probably can only learn maybe 7 or 9 notes at a time. So try that. Now, if you are an experienced person learning by ear, then you're actually learning with larger chunks than single notes. We're still only holding about 7 items in short-term memory at any given time. And the goal when we're learning by ear is to engage our short-term memory and transfer it to our long-term memory. But if you're learning in larger chunks, you may be able to get a bigger thing because maybe this is something you've already heard. Right? That might be one chunk. And then the next chunk. Right? So let me see, and this is how you can sort of calibrate for yourself. Try repeating this whole chunk. How did that go? Did you get the whole thing? Now play it twice. Listen to me the first time and play along the second time. So for those of you who got that already, great. You're ready to move on to the next phrase in the song. But I want to make sure that everyone follows along with us, so be patient for a minute. And if you didn't get that much, here's what you'll want to do. So let's take it in those little chunks. First of all, if you're not used to learning by ear, you want to find what's the first note that I played. And sometimes it's very helpful to use your voice. So we heard, use your pitch memory. Find that note on your instrument. And for this first phrase, what happens? Does it go up? Does it go down? I heard it go up. So don't think about what the notes are called. Just move up the scale. See if you can match this. Copy that. And now the second part. I picked up where the first one left off. Now, once you've got those two parts, your next goal is going to be to combine them. And maybe for some of you, you could get this chunk. So this is those first two chunks together. Try repeating that by yourself. Now, I'll do it once, you play with me the second time. You repeat. Very nice. Now we have another part. And I'm actually going to divide this into two more chunks. The next part of that first melody would be this. If you can do that, then do it. But if that's too long for you, that's okay. Let's break that in half. Try that. And again, find the notes. Think about the ending note. End it on that note. Think about the starting note. Very simple. And the next part. Try that one. I'll play it once. You repeat the second time. So this second half of the first melodic phrase, let's add those parts together. You try it. Now I'll do it once, you play the second time. Okay, now by this time, we have learned the first melodic phrase in pieces, but we have to put it together. So I'm going to go back. Here it is again. See if after having done what we just did, you're able to play this in its entirety. Did that work for you this time? That's what we started with as our first repeat. Now, if you didn't get that, you have two options. One, go back in the video and repeat everything. Just follow along with that repeat. And the other option is to do what I do when I'm learning new music, right? And I learn a lot of songs from YouTube or from recordings, and I learn by ear. This is exactly how I learn myself, and I've been doing it for 20 years. You just play as much as you can repeat back in that phrase, hit pause, try to copy it. If you successfully copy it, great. Repeat it a few more times until you're starting again to transfer from short-term to long-term memory. If that chunk was too short, you think you can do bigger, play a longer chunk. If it was too long, try a shorter chunk. Don't judge yourself. Don't compare yourself to other people. Only compare yourself against how well you did yesterday, right? Your goal is simply to increase this and to develop the skill that will enable you to learn lots of songs by ear. So here is that whole first phrase, and if you didn't get it, do what actually, you know what, I'll cheat a little bit. I'm going to play the first phrase in 4 chunks and then whole. So here's the first chunk, second chunk, third chunk, fourth chunk. First 2 chunks together. Third and fourth chunk together. Whole thing together. So that's the first phrase. Now let's do the second phrase. Now the second phrase, if you've already successfully learned the first phrase, is going to be way easier. Why? Because it's a sequence. It's very similar, the rhythm is the same, and everything is just a step down. So let me play the first and the second phrases together for you, and then see how you do with learning the second phrase. First phrase, then second phrase. And then it repeats. First. Okay, and don't worry about that little ornament I threw in at the end, unless it's easier for you to get. Don't be distracted by the ornament if it's challenging. Only do it if it comes naturally, and don't forget that melodic rhythm is the most important thing for you to pay attention to. But let me break down that second phrase for those of you who need a little bit more time or a little bit smaller chunks. So here's the second phrase. And let me break that down. I'm not going to break it down into 4 pieces. I'm just going to break it down into 2 pieces now. Because if you got the first phrase, this one will be easier. So first part, first half. So try that by yourself. Now I'm going to do it twice. You repeat the second time. You with me. So that's the first half. And you should repeat it several times. Pause the video and just play it a few more times, right? When I'm learning by ear, I will repeat things 10 times before I move on. So I'll be sitting here, I'll pause the video, go. You get the picture. Second half of that second phrase. Try it again. This time, play with me on my second repeat. Let's try again. Okay, now you repeat that 10 times. Pause the video. The reason that we repeat it a bunch of times is because what's happening is we're playing a game with our short-term memory. We're trying to hold something in short-term memory, and then we move on to learn a new part of the song. When we move on to learn the new part of the song, if we haven't gotten that first part of the song into our long-term memory, or at least medium-term memory, I don't know the technical terms, if we haven't moved it deeper into our memory, then we might forget that first part. We might have to go back. So you avoid that problem if you repeat things enough times the first time through. Because what's happening is you're now creating what used to be just a sequence of notes into its own remembered chunk, so that you add one chunk to the next chunk. So if you've done that, and you have these as its own chunk, and this as its chunk, then you can try putting them together. Try again. Okay. So that whole chunk you should also repeat 10 times. And then let's add it to the first melody. Let's see if we can do this together. How did that go? Right? And it naturally repeats, and in the song itself, in the introduction itself, there's a repeat that happens there. So it's very easy to loop, and looping is always a good strategy when you're learning by ear. So I'm going to loop it 3 or 4 times, and just play along as much as you can. Next phrase. So let's take this one in short chunks, wherever you're at. So the first one. So it ends, part we already learned, ends on that. Next phrase. Try it. Next part. Okay, there's a little sequence built in, and now I'm going to put those three pieces together. So try to make sure you get the rhythm, and it's starting after the beat. And if I haven't reminded you enough already, use your voice. Put down your instrument. Try to sing the phrases. Often it's easier to learn by ear with your voice than with your instrument, especially if you have a lot of training in learning through notation. You might have blocked out the part of your brain that makes it easy to learn by ear with your instrument, and you're too used to looking at notation. Use your voice if it helps. So here's that phrase. 1, 2, 3. I said the 1 to indicate the first part of the measure. In fact, that is where the previous phrase ends. So let's do that transition from the last phrase. 1. Okay. Let's try that chunk again. We're doing the transition from the opening, the second phrase in the opening, into this transitional phrase. Transition. Okay. Let's try that a few more times. It's a little tricky rhythmically. Now I'm going to add a little tag to help get us to the next phrase. Try to repeat. That last phrase was? Let's try that with the tag. Try it by yourself. Now with me. Okay, now we're ready to get to the next phrase. Starting on that note, and it's a little tricky, but I'm going to make it simple. There's lots of ways to make it fancy and ornament, but... So it's a very simple sequence, right? You can hear that it's the same thing up all the way. And I'm not going to break it down piece by piece, because once you get one, right, it's this. The next one. The next one. Right? You get the picture. So let's instead try it in chunks of 2 or 3. Now, at this point, you may already get it. You may already start to go all the way up the scale. But I'm going to stop you for this reason. Learning by ear and learning music is as much about what your fingers, your hands, or your muscles in your neck, your throat, or whatever parts of your body are being used to create the sound. You're not simply trying to remember in your ear, you're trying to train muscle memory to also learn this piece by ear. So sometimes when you have a sequence, the interesting thing about a sequence is you can intellectually say it's the same thing. Da, 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 da. It's a note going up, and then skipping, and then coming up, da, 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 da. But the physical process to do this is very different than the physical process to do this. The fingers are in a different position. You have a bigger interval here. In the first one, we had to change the string. You may be on a different instrument where you don't have a string change. Right? So this is not the same as this. Is not the same as this. So a sequence like this can be something that you can use to practice technical fluency. You want to get fast? Then do this, right? You can do the whole sequence slow like this. But if you want to play it fast, or up to the speed that it is in the recording, you want to do this. Right? And then let's make it a little bit more. Try that. Try that. Try that. Try that. Try that. Now let's just try the whole thing. Here's the speed that it should be in the song. That's the final part of the song. Here's if you really want to work on your technical fluency, you'll try this. Well, I screwed it up. Okay, so we spent some time on that sequence, but I have one more thing to say about that sequence, which is that if you listen to the song انتظارك, and I'll put some links below, you hear that when this little introductory phrase comes in, and comes in between, before the first verse, the second verse, and the third verse, and actually before the fourth verse as well, there's an alternate version of the sixth scale degree. So in Maqam Hijaz, this is the first scale degree, the tonic. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 octave. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You have a flat sixth scale degree in this sequence. Flat 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? But there's an alternate version where you get this. 5, 6. That's the higher 6, what we would call a B half flat in this case. So you might want to have to practice that one in the same way. Okay? So now let's add the final tag. Once you get up to that octave, can you do that last tag? Many of you might have gotten it already. If not, let's just do it the same way we did everything else. We can leave out the first part, that's the ending. Again, there's a sequence embedded in there, so if that was too much for you to get, you can do this. And repeat on your own. And then. And one tip for you here. You may find that the melody seems easy to get in a bigger chunk. But if you really want to work on your intonation and the way that these notes sound, you might actually prefer to take a smaller chunk. Because this is D, you can call this E flat, but it's not the same E flat on the piano. You can call that F sharp, but it's not the same F sharp on the piano. That interval is bigger than a half step. So the intervals of Jins Hijaz, which we have here, and if you want to learn more about Jins Hijaz, check out the lesson for Jins Hijaz, as well as the lesson for Maqam Hijaz, which has some phrases from the whole song. You're going to realize that these notes, you need to spend time focusing on the interval size. So you could do that 20 times, making sure it's sounding exactly like my intervals do. And once you've done that, you can go back. And the very final phrase. And it often repeats. Starting over. Okay, so now we'll do what I mentioned in the previous video as a technique that I personally like to use a lot, which is working backwards from the end. Because it gives you that, once you have a really strong memory of the end, it gives you that drive to the ending. So let's do that. Let's take the ending and gradually add one more piece before it. Again, this is another great way to strengthen the transfer from short-term to long-term memory. So the last phrase. Try that. Okay, now I'm going to add the previous chunk. Try that. Now I'll play that much, and on the repeat, you play with me. Okay. Okay, so now let's go back and add the one before that. And that was that fast sequence going up the scale. Try that whole thing by yourself. Pause the video. Now this time try playing along with me, starting with the sequence. Okay. We want to keep going back and adding more and getting to the end. So we're going to do that little transitional phrase. And frankly, this one is a little tricky to start on. And you may find that. And when you find one part easier than another, you just have to make the decision to spend extra time there. Same thing, like the ending phrases are very simple technically as compared with the running sequence that goes up. So you might need to spend more time on one than the other for technical reasons rather than for simply melodic reasons. So. Now, by this point, you probably forgot that little transitional phrase. So let's do that one by itself one more time. One more time. So now let's take it from there to the very end. Okay? Probably it's worth doing that even one more time. Okay, let's go back one more phrase. So I'll play it once. You can play along if you can. I'll actually play it twice from here to the end. you should be ready to do the whole thing from beginning to end. Because all we have to do now is add the very first phrase, because we made it all the way back. So now I'm going to play the whole song 2 or 3 times. Now, the fact is that people have very different learning styles. Some people learn better in small chunks. Some people learn better in big chunks. I find that I learn best when I take both a small chunk approach and a big chunk approach, because it kind of links all the pieces, but also gives me enough work in the little chunks. So some people, like if you're used to, for example, if you're an Irish fiddler or you're used to learning short dance pieces by ear, it might be easier not to break it up and just to like hear the piece 25 times and just try to play along each time, and your brain will fill in the gaps each way. That's fine too. Either way, now I'm going to play it. I'm just going to repeat the whole thing maybe 3 times, and you play along as you can, and if you're having difficulty, go back in the video and repeat other chunks. But here's the whole thing, and I'm going to repeat from the end to the beginning so that you really get it there. So follow along with the repeat. So it starts on the offbeat. Dum, la, da, dum, dum, dum. Okay? Repeat. Repeat. Right? Now I added some ornaments that 3rd time. And for those of you who are more advanced or you feel ready for it, you want to try it, you can learn the ornaments in the same way that you learned everything else. You can try throwing them in, or you can take them in chunks. I added an ornament that you'll hear in Lessons Orchestra. It's not. It's this. So for those of you who feel you can do it, then do that. Getting faster. Using that other 6th, which is Jins Rust in that part, right? For those of you who saw the Maqam Hijaz lesson, you know that we have the option of either Jins Nahawand on the 4th scale degree of Hijaz, or Jins Rust on the 4th scale degree of Hijaz, and that's going to reflect change in the 6th scale degree. And if what I'm saying doesn't make sense to you, then that means you haven't watched the lesson for Jins, for Maqam Hijaz, which was our 4th Maqam lesson. So definitely go back and check that lesson out, because that'll explain the Maqam component of what we're doing here. I wanted to focus just on the mechanics of getting something into your memory. A big thanks to Flushing Town Hall. Right now I am recording from historic Flushing Town Hall in Flushing, Queens. This is my day job. I'm deputy director of this wonderful performing arts institution, which on January 12th of 2021 has been closed to the public for, 9 months? though we're doing lots of online programming. Maybe you're seeing this now, in which case, go check out flushingtownhall.org. I'll put the link below. Or maybe you're seeing this after we've reopened to the public, hopefully in fall 2021 or in 2022, in which case, if you're in New York City, come check out our programs. It's been an honor to work at this institution for a number of years. Been very supportive of my life as a musician and a scholar, in addition to my ability to do finance and government relations. Anyway, so once again, a big thanks to my Patreon supporters. Your support is incredible. Please check that out. Check out the Patreon page, because there's extra lessons for Patreon supporters. And your support can just simply help me out, help me keep making these lessons free for everybody. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I really appreciate that, and I really appreciate you sticking through the whole video. So thank you, and have a great day.